Hi everybody, I'm Elsa, I'm one of the co-founders of Karma. But 4 years ago, me and my co-founders, we're 4 co-founders, we sat down to discuss how are we going to save our company. Because for 9 months we had been building on a deal platform that it turned out nobody was really interested in using. So in short, we had absolutely no clue of what we were doing. And this is us back in 2015. And we started off here in Stockholm, 4 founders working in a basement all hours trying to figure this out. And even though we didn't really know how we would save our company, we knew that we had built something great, or a start of something great, but that didn't really have an end user and that didn't necessarily solve an important problem. So what we did know is that we had always wanted to build something great. We wanted to have a massive impact on a global scale. So we had this big vision, I guess, but vague mission. And we were clearly failing. And this realization and original failure would actually become the starting point of what would then become our mission for the next 4 years up until today. To use technology to solve one of the world's largest climate issues, food waste. So we said, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to change. And we need to change now. We need to change our way of working. And that was probably a pretty good call, since our previous tactics had almost taken the company to bankruptcy. So we started questioning everything, and since we only had literally days left to save the company, we became ruthless with our priorities, and time was of essence. So we started small, we made speed a habit, and most importantly, we started looking at things differently. And we said, okay, let's instead look at problems that we've experienced, issues, friction points, waste, and ask ourselves, is there a business opportunity here? And this was when we realized how big of an issue food waste actually is. That 1/3 of all food produced globally is thrown away, and that if food waste was a country, it would be the 3rd largest carbon emitter just behind China and the US. So that's when we started Karma, or created Karma. And as most of you here seem to know, since you have the app, it's an app that connects consumers, like all of us in here, with restaurants, cafes, grocery stores who have surplus food for sale. So you buy this food for half price, pick it up at location. And we did this pivot, meaning we changed our whole business model, our whole focus in 3 weeks. So within days, we actually signed our first restaurants to join the platform, who started selling food. We had our first paying users, paying customers, which was a nice change for once. And within our first week, we were able to rescue 150 meals, which at the time was like a massive achievement for us. So we were up and running, we had saved our company, and since then, our mission have been to solve global food waste, and as Victoria said, to make us the first zero food waste generation. But what I want to focus on today, well, first of all, I want to emphasize a little bit more about our model. That is something that I usually get asked, like, okay, how come you think you've grown so quickly? What is it that makes it working? Is it only the impact angle? And I would say yes, partially, but it's also because of this, that we've created a model that is super easy to use, and that is a win-win-win for everyone. For us as the consumers, we get to buy great food and save our hard-earned money since it's half off. It's a great concept for our sellers, meaning the restaurants and grocery stores, because they obviously get to reduce their waste. They get to attract new people to their stores, which is crucial. And also they get a new revenue stream for something that previously were 100% loss. And thirdly, we all contribute to actually creating a more sustainable environment. And using this model, we've now rescued over 650 tons of food from landfill, which is, at least I personally think, is quite hard to grasp what that really means. So to put it into context, it's the equivalent weight of 51 double-decker buses. But most importantly, or more interestingly for you guys, is probably that we've actually made or had 5% of the Swedish population backing us and using our service. But we are in UK, in London, we're growing regionally, we just launched in Brighton, and we're also live now in Paris, in France. And we have our sights on new markets, because it's a global problem, so it needs a global solution. But I'm gonna rewind a little bit again and talk about the first couple of months in the Karma journey, and talk a little bit about how I would call it, how we went from fuck up to scale up. Because our first year, or at least the first 9 months, it was a period of a lot of mistakes or unwished outcomes, if you'd like to describe it in that way. That would be really, really important for us in the sense that we would use those mistakes or failures to get learnings that would make us form operating principles that we have then used in order to scale our company since then and to take us in the hyper-growth phase that we are in right now. So what's an operating principle? Who in here have heard of this expression before? One. Not that many people seem hesitant. So is it a company value? A rule? It's neither, I'd say. It's more concrete than a company value, and it's more flexible than a rule. It's a way of working, it's a way of getting guidance for how you can base your decisions in different situations, how to handle different situations, and how to collaborate as a team. So I'm going to go through 5 of our great failures and the learnings from them and what operating principles we've applied to not do them again. So first one out, build it and they will come. I know I'm asking you a lot of questions, but who in here have heard this expression, because it's important? Okay, a few. So in short, it's a common expression or cliche or one-liner used in the startup community. And it basically means that if you think that you can build it and they will come, you think that it's only about building the best product and the rest will follow. And maybe a good example here would be like, if you just create the perfect outfit, people will find it and people will buy it. And to some extent, maybe that is true in some cases. In our experience, that's not how it works. There's so much to it, and it's actually quite a tough journey to get something to look really simple. So we did this completely wrong. And the background for that is that at Karma, we are complete product nerds. We love innovating and building our great products, which is a great thing, and we love that. But as a result, we fell in love with our product and all of the cutting edge tech that we wanted to build. And that was, that made us the typical cliche of build it and they will come. So once we decided, or were rather forced to make a pivot, we stopped listening so much to people around us who weren't necessarily the right people to listen to. And what I mean by that is like we had fooled ourselves into just talking to people who confirmed what we wanted to hear. So friends or families, other entrepreneurs or investors who, might were relevant to some extent, but basically they were saying what we wanted to hear and not what we needed to hear. So we said we need to focus on the only one who really matters. Who do you think that is? Yes. The end user. And I know it sounds super obvious, it sounds simple, or at least I feel that way. But in our experience, like true customer obsession can be really, really hard. And it can be scary, or at least for some reason it was for us. So we got blinded by a lot of smart people that we respected, telling us, confirming that we were in the right direction, but they weren't really necessarily the end user. So we said, okay, that's fine, but we need to change this overall and just put users first and make data-driven decision. We need to start testing everything, much more than we're already doing, and test it fast. We need to listen, we need to learn, we need to iterate fast, create quick feedback loops, and make speed a habit and part of our DNA. Our second mistake, building for scale day one. So as I told you in the beginning, we had this big vision, we wanted to have a massive impact on a global scale, but in our attempt to reach massive scale day one, we became too thorough. Because if you need to reach the whole world day one, there's quite a lot of things to think about. So we became too thorough, which made us slow, unfocused, and stretched thin. So we ended up building on our brilliant idea, our perfect product, and we wanted it to be perfection before anyone could test it, which made us slow, as I said, and we lost a lot of time. And also, by targeting everyone, we ended up not really reaching anyone. So our principle became, we're not going to build a single thing from now on unless we've tested with a prototype or similar to get initial validation, and only then we should build something. So when we sat down after 9 months and said, okay, we're going to change our business model, we need to actually live after this operating principle. And we said there's 3 things we need to get initial validation for before moving forward. And it was 1, does restaurant have this surplus food to sell? I mean, statistics showed us that they did, but we still needed to sort of get some kind of confirmation, and were they really willing to sell it to us, or via our platform rather. Secondly, would consumers, like all of us in here, would you want to buy this food for half price? And thirdly, and this was probably the most critical one, would people be willing to actually go to the location and pick it up as takeaway and not expect it to be delivery? And it turned out, yes, people were. And only then we started building. And this time it was based on some kind of data, at least. Small amounts of data, for sure, but at least data, and not 100% our own personal opinions. So these early tests taught us so much of what we needed to build that we otherwise wouldn't have seen, and it saved us months of development time, which I think we all know means saving tons of money. So the principle is build an MVP to validate, only then build and automate for scale. And that said, like, high ambitions are great. We definitely want to, reach global scale ourselves. But if you aim for the masses day one in everything you do, you might never reach scale. Thirdly, doing things right. In our first year, we were amazing at doing things right, or at least in our own opinion. But we were terrible at doing the right things. In our founding team, we're all academics, so we are trained to be great at planning, structure, processes, being analytical. But as an entrepreneur, in a startup, at least in my experience, speed is everything. So we needed to make time our most precious asset and use time pressure, real-time pressure, artificial time pressure, to work in our favor. Because the challenge as an entrepreneur is not necessarily to have things to do, and I think it's not really relatable to being an entrepreneur. That's probably how it is in life. Like, you will always have too much to do. The challenge is to get what moves the needle done in time. So, surprise, surprise, the principle. We've started asking ourselves, and we still do, like, if you only have 1 day left to save your company, what would you do? And in our case, we only had days left to save our company, so that question sort of came naturally to us. And it was so interesting to see what happened when we did ask that question, just as a test, because it was clear that we had fooled ourselves into thinking that doing tasks equaled creating value. To some extent it had, but in a lot of aspects it really hadn't. So we said, okay, we can't really be fooled by to-do lists or just doing the things that feels good. We need to focus only on the things that moves the needle. We have solving problems. We realized that we shouldn't necessarily view problems as something we should take instant action on, because that's what we did in the beginning. Problem, solve it, just run around. That's basically what I feel like I'm doing all day. When people are like, what's your job? I'm like, it's about running around and solving problems. And I'm not sure if that is just applicable for an entrepreneur, but that's how it is for us. But we realized that if we always have that approach, we made the assumption that problems equals root cause, which is not necessarily always the case. Which means that if you just view a problem as something you need to solve instantly, you might, or we at least, ended up creating new problems because you haven't really solved the main issue itself. So we said, okay, we're going to use problems as cues. Not make the assumption that problems equals the root cause, but instead ask, why is this a problem? Why, like becoming more like a child again and chunk it down until we really, really found the core issue. And that one we can fix. Because for us, once we started fixing root causes early on, we saved a lot of time and energy. So kill the monster while it's small. And lastly, my personal favorites, absolute truths. The shoulds, the musts, the everyone, everybody, no one, always, never. Don't you love them? You can't. Says who? Because we all know, I just used it myself, definitives are only definitives until someone proves otherwise. So we fell for this ourselves, and I've done it too personally. So a silly example, but in high school I wanted to learn to code. And I was told that I'm too old, it's too late for me to learn, I should have started when I was 10, sorry, the journey sort of is gone. And I was dumb enough to listen, and then in university I wanted to start my own company, and I was told I was too young and inexperienced, and they were right, but who cares? Or at least that's my decision. If I'm willing to pay the price, or as my last boss told me, like, you're gonna burn so much, you're gonna like keep hitting your head into the wall because you're so inexperienced. And that's when I realized that, well, that's exactly what I'm willing to do. So I was dumb enough to listen in the beginning. Fortunately, I stopped listening after a while, and at age 23, I did start my first company. Karma is my second venture, and I'm currently learning to code, and I've never been more happy or stimulated in my life. Hard work, definitely, but incredibly rewarding. So, at the risk of sounding like a cliche, but if you do have a dream, we try to tell people, like, don't underestimate others, don't listen too much to the noise. Definitely, ask questions. I try to ask a lot of questions and listen to advice, but I try to challenge truths. And for us at Karma, one rule of thumb, in our journey at least, has been that the less hands-on experience someone have within an area, the more truths or opinions or advice that person seems to have to give us. So we try to question our sources, and every time someone gives us advice, we just try to tread carefully and ask, is this true? Is it true for us? Is it true for our company, our product, our industry, our team, in the time we're living? Maybe, and then we can act on it, but we shouldn't just assume we should. And that said, of course, I want to encourage you all to reflect on what I've said here today. I'm very used to talking to other entrepreneurs, so it's very tweaked towards how you do as an entrepreneur, but it's still by sharing our own mistakes or failures and the operating principles we've applied since then, perhaps can inspire you in your work and sort of question, okay, can this thing apply for my work here or not? So I'm very, very happy to be here, and I'm really happy to be challenged on what I've said here today, otherwise I would be a hypocrite. But that said, thank you so much.